This meeting held in the Robert Gordon School Library is an open session of the Roselle Park Board of Education held under the Open Public Meetings Act of the State of New Jersey. Notice of this meeting was sent to the Star Ledger, the local source, the Home News Tribune, the Borough Clerk, school offices, and district website. Madam Secretary, please call roll.
President Miller,
Here.
Vice President Sokol,
Here.
Mr. Balaban,
Here.
Mr. Bruckenstein, Mr. Dan,
Here.
Mr. Gerton,
Here.
Mr. Harms,
Here.
Mr. Nelson,
Here.
Mr. Vida. We do have a quorum.
Okay, please stand for the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Robert Gordon School. Kenny, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. We'd like to first start off with the first public participation portion of the evening for agenda items only. If you have an agenda item that you would like to speak on, please come forward, state your name, address, and the agenda item.
Carol 612 Sherman Avenue, Roselle Park. Ladies and gentlemen of the audience, viewing audience, President Miller, members of the board, good evening. Good evening. Item number 6. Would someone please explain that one?
Review approval of district and medical service agreement.
Annually, we contract a service with a physician to provide medical service to the school district. This is a contract for next school year, beginning July 1st, 2014, where Dr. Roselle and his care station staff will provide a variety of medical services to the school district, such as doing physicals and providing services at athletic events, etc. There's numerous things that they will do for the school district at the cost that you see there listed in the agenda.
Thank you. Number 9. Please explain renovations to existing school buildings.
Number 9 is a bid award resolution. We went out to bid for a lease purchase. As you are well aware, as from our budget meetings, the school district is going to be borrowing a loan, which is called the lease purchase, a total amount of $750,000, which we will be paying back over the course of 5 years, 5 payments. The first payment is built into the proposed budget. You have to go out to bid for the interest that you're going to be paying on that particular loan. It's required by law. We did so with the help of the Middlesex Regional Educational Commission lease purchase bidding. They were our financial advisors. We received initially 4 bids, and you see that right within the resolution. One of those 4 was determined to be non-compliant with the bid specifications. That was determined by the financial advisor and also checked and agreed to that fact by our school attorney's office. Dennis McKeever reviewed it, and he was in agreement that they were in non-compliant. So therefore, the bid, if the board should vote this evening, is going to be awarded to U.S. Bancorp, who will be charging a 1.424% interest rate. That was the lowest interest interest rate of the bids we received that were compliant.
I thank you, Mrs. Gershon.
You're welcome.
I do know about lease to purchase, but what are the renovations? What are we renovating?
As you were informed back at the numerous budget meetings that we held with the lease purchase, our intention is going to be to purchase quite a number of computers. We're going to be purchasing a number of textbooks, literacy textbooks in particular for the school district, grades K through 8. We're also going to be purchasing some furniture. We also have plans to purchase a new boiler for Sherman School to replace one that is 95 years old and non-operational at the moment. And we are also going to have plans to purchase auditorium seating and flooring for the high school auditorium to renovate that particular area.
So a boiler is renovation?
Yes. Again, the wording that you see there is general wording that is required by law that sort of is an umbrella over a variety of areas. And this wording was prepared for me by our attorney, Dennis McKeever.
Is it a regular umbrella or a beach umbrella?
I would love it to be a beach umbrella myself, but
Number 10.
number 10 is the resolution that the board will be voting on tonight that will possibly, if they approve, will adopt the budget for next school year 14-15. And this very elaborate wording is wording that is required by the Department of Education for the adoption of the school budget, with the dollar amounts and all the dates put into the resolution to fit the specifics of the Roselle Park School District.
Whereas, number 6, whereas, of District 456, the total amount of the budget for special revenue fund expense shall be $781,000, of which 0.00 will be raised by tax levy. Explain that.
The reason why it is zero determined, be raised by tax levy is because special revenue fund consists of grants that a school district receives, and for Roselle Park, it's the entitlement grants known as NCLB and IDEA. So that money is given to us by the government, and zero of that dollar amount comes from any sort of local tax levy.
It's not on the, all right, I'll speak with it. Well, then, you guys are going to vote on a budget tonight?
Item number 10.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. No, this is off the budget. This is a question I had asked at the last meeting. Homeland Security. Do we have any Homeland Security money that we can use for middle school and Aldine for security of protecting voters coming in and not roaming the schools?
No, we have not received any Homeland Security money.
Can you apply for it?
We are always looking for grants to apply, and I'm sure that is one area that we will look into.
Well, the cost is how much? $13,000? for the primary and the general election.
No,
There
that was years ago.
Yeah.
That was when the election was in April, Jacob. We now don't pay anything. And that was because of the extra printing on the ballots.
You don't pay anything.
Because
We don't pay,
it's,
it's run.
They're talking about the election costs, I believe.
The election cost is paid by the county. We used to pay part of it, and since we go through in November, the ballots that everybody gets at home is made up by the county, and the county sends it out, so it doesn't cost us any money at that point.
the school district
The
doesn't get
school,
it.
the school district doesn't get it. I guess my question to you, Jake, is, you're asking about Homeland Security to have security for our buildings. So we're mixing apples and oranges here, I think, because you're asking about what it costs for 13,000, that had nothing to do with the Homeland Security. So I guess the question to you is, are you asking, do we have any Homeland Security money that would pay for a police officer to be at these two locations? It wouldn't be Robert Gordon, it would be Aldine, and it would be middle school.
The middle school.
Okay, so, well, you said Robert Gordon, I just wanted to confirm what it was. Okay, I'm just
Right, we're not
confirming.
playing apples and oranges, so. you know,
That's apples and oranges when we ask about Homeland Security and the 13,000 when it costs, because that was for printing, the printing of the ballots, because we had it in April, it had nothing to do with Homeland Security. That's what I'm saying, it's apples and oranges when you come down to
The
that.
building
Okay.
is open.
Right.
Well,
And-
we were-
Election time.
and- Yes.
Do we have anyone,
No.
such as with the other voting places, they now are having police and security people?
We did do that last year
We do have
with the
police.
voting for the middle school and Aldine. But we can discuss that in a second public session. Do you have any other agenda items from this?
All right, I'll bring it up.
Excellent, thank you.
Salt appears in 150 Berlin Street. With regard to agenda item number 9, you said it was an error. Was it a technical error? Was it procedural error? Was it an error on the part of the, well,
They did not follow the specifications required by the bid. So therefore, if you do not follow the directions in the bid specs, then the bid cannot be part of the consideration.
so the lowest responsible bidder became U.S. Bank?
That is correct, that's what I stated before.
With regard to agenda item number 10, for the approval, does it require a simple majority or a 2/3 majority?
Simple majority.
Seeing there's no one else, I'm going to close the first public participation portion of this meeting. And now we're on to committee and liaison reports. Does anyone have a liaison or committee report they'd like to speak on?
Just very briefly, we'll be holding a short policy committee meeting after this board meeting to discuss shaping the first ever social media policy for our school district upon recommendation from New Jersey school boards. And tomorrow night I'll be attending the Union County Ed Services Commission meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Valdez. Anyone else?
There's a quick personnel meeting after this meeting as well.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Burton. Now we're on to our principal's report. Mrs. Kenny?
Actually, if I can start.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Mr. Rita?
I'll introduce Ms. Stan, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, President, appreciate it.
You don't have the superintendent packet.
No,
Was that the addition?
You got bumped from
I don't know, I got bumped already, I'll tell you. That's okay. Good evening, everyone, and I was hoping to see a few more people here. I know that at the April 9th meeting, board meeting, there were some concerns from the public, the community, and some parents regarding the libraries. And as you heard my speech on the full-day kindergarten, you understand the needs for it. But I do also understand, and I'm a good listener, and I'd like to hear different opinions and so forth. And I know some of the concerns was about losing the library for our children and the students. After that meeting, I held a meeting, one of our administrative meetings, that obviously involved our elementary principals. And at the meeting, the subject of the libraries came up. And I always, have to give credit to my staff and our administration because, we work very well together. I think our meetings are very productive. And I asked Mrs. Kenny to speak about a plan that actually they brought up, and the community did bring up as one of the concerns. Why not move our computers into the library, make the computer rooms the classrooms? At first, when we thought of that before, however, we had a concern that the computer labs may not be adequate for classroom. So our principal, Mrs. Kenny, brought up, why don't we revisit that, which we did. We already had the rooms selected for kindergarten classes, which are very adequate for kindergarten. So now came the decision of how we're going to move another classroom to the computer labs. So we had a discussion on how we were going to do that, and obviously one of the biggest concerns that we had was the funding and the budget. And as you know, everything costs money. So we looked at every aspect, and I'm very happy to report, and I'm going to ask Mrs. Kenny to report in a little bit more detail for each elementary school what the plans are, that we have a very good chance, unless something really critical comes up that we just cannot, that we will be able to save our library space, make them media center spaces where technology will be held, instruction will be held here, or our access to the books will remain as is. We do need to fund the kindergarten, full-day kindergarten classes. Obviously, it does impact our library staff, but the libraries will become media centers if the plan continues to go forward. And Mrs. Kenny, I know I spoke a little bit more than you wanted me to, but I know you want to report on all three elementary and what plan we have in place for that.
Good evening, Mrs. Garcia, Mr. Garrido, and members of the board and members of the public. As Mr. Garrido said, we heard the public loud and clear at that April 9th board meeting, and we all put our heads together and came up with a plan to make the libraries not libraries anymore, but real media centers. And together with Mr. Estrada, we came up with the plan to maybe move forward a little bit with the purchasing of laptops that can be used in the media center, which would have to be purchased next year anyway, so that we wouldn't have to rewire the labs. So it just makes perfect sense to make this a hub in a building, which it should be. In Robert Gordon's school, the computers will come down to the library. I'm already calling the media center. Most everything will stay intact. We might have to take out some shelves, but the present computer lab will be used for one of my self-contained classrooms. In Sherman School, the computers will go into the library also, and the present computer lab will be converted into a classroom space. And in Aldine School, once again, computers will come into the library, and the present computer room will be use as one of the small group instruction rooms, basic skills. So there are plans, it should work out very nicely, and we will keep the libraries intact for the children. We'll need volunteers to run the libraries, we'll have to count on our teachers for book borrowing and things like that, but we have the Destiny system for tracking the books, so we should be in really good shape to do that. So we're pretty excited about our new plan, and we're hoping to move forward with it.
Thank you, Mrs. Skinner, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing the superintendent report and the principal's report is complete, we'll now go on to the policy section of the meeting. And I'd like someone to make a motion to approve agenda item 1.
Mr. President, I'd like to move agenda item 1, the district policy on visitors.
Thank you, Mr. Ballman. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Sokol, are there any questions or comments? Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Vice President Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Balaban?
Yes.
Mr. Bruckenstein? Mr. Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Gerton?
Yes.
Mr. Harms?
Yes?
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Vita?
Yes.
President Miller?
Yes.
On roll call, motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Now we're on to education, where I'd like someone to make a motion to approve agenda items 2 through 5, 2 being district substitutes, 3 being educational trip requests, 4 being education programs, 5 being the ESY program. Mr. Gerton, second. Ms. Sokol?
I think actually district substitutes normally under personnel, but I think we're okay for education. Just note that.
Yes.
Okay.
So moved.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Gerton. Ms. Sokol, the second. Are there any questions or comments?
Just number 5, Mr. Superintendent, can you just explain this, how this is going to work a little bit? This is for special ed, or?
Yes. The districts are required, based on the student's IEP, to run an extended school year program. We've had it in the past here in Roselle Park, and it's worked very well. Ms. Formello is responsible and is planning on the hiring of the staff, the use of the facilities, and the program that's going to be in place.
So it's 2 different schemes, one is 4.5 hours, the other
Yes,
one is.
again, it depends on the language on the IEPs.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Those items are approved, and now we're on to business. I'd like someone to make a motion to approve agenda items 6 through 9. 6 being approval of the district medical service agreement. 7 being use of buildings and grounds. And I just want to make a note on 7A, the sign saying that Sherman, so that should read, instead of 6:30, it should be 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. on that Friday, May 16th, 2020.
Which one is that?
It's 7A.
Seven.
7A should be 6 p.m. instead of 6:30. So that is 7 use of buildings and grounds, and with that change, 8 would be approval of bills, 9 would be bid award, and 10 would be the adoption of the 2000, I'm sorry, that's 7 for you.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Second? Second, Mr. Vita. Any questions?
Number 9. Couple of just questions, I'm not sure, down be it resolved that the board hereby awards the lease purchase agreement to the U.S. board, and it has the rate bid of 1.487, yet it says 1.42 up in the as a rate bid.
Because that's the effective yield.
But it's saying down below, the last line is saying
1.487.
so at the rate bid of 1.487, it should say at the effective yield of 1.487, because the rate bid is actually 1.424.
So we shall all note that and change it to that wording.
Effective yield.
I don't care which one are we approving, the rate bid or the effective yield?
Right, either one.
The effective yield.
Just on number 7A, if I could ask that the administration just confirm that date with the building principal. I believe there's actually, we've previously approved sometime on the 16th there, the Cub Scouts, I believe, meet on, we've approved them for May 16th. If we could just confirm.
Is that on the 23rd?
23rd Memorial Day week.
I will check. I will
Just,
check
you
on
know,
that.
we certainly can
Is
approve
that
it,
for
but,
Sherman as well?
no, that is at Sherman.
That is at Sherman.
So let's just,
Do they utilize the gymnasium?
They might
Or do
utilize.
they
I don't
meet
know.
classrooms?
I believe they utilize the gym, so let's.
Yeah, I do too, so I'll check on that.
We'll check.
Yeah, I mean, not to stop us or not
Right.
to table it, just to
No, that's
understand there.
We will check.
We will
there may
check
be-
that.
Mrs. Gershio, you did a thorough explanation with the member of the audience's questions on the bid award number 9. I just actually had 2 questions, and thank you, Mr. Harms, for pointing out the effective yield. There's a column in this chart up here that says purchase option penalty, and though we're awarding US Bancorp because it's the lowest accepted bid based on the rate bid, it also has the highest purchase option penalty at 1.03. What exactly is that purchase option penalty, and what is the likelihood that we would need to exercise that?
The likelihood is slim to none, because that is for if we were paying it back early.
Okay.
The penalty for
Yeah,
paying
you
it
probably
back
would
early.
have it.
And although I do not have a crystal ball that can see into the future, I wish I did. So I can't speak 100% definitely, but it's highly unlikely that that would happen.
So
That's
if we
the
did
best-
have the money to
that's the best
pay it back,
answer.
we'd have to pay an extra
Yeah.
Correct.
higher than
Yes, that's what that means.
the next one. Okay. When we spoke of the renovations to the existing buildings, there's a need for a boiler, I believe at the middle school, and also the high school auditorium. When are we looking, so the, you know, in theory, as soon as the loan closes, we would have our the ability to go out and purchase these. When are we looking to actually replace that boiler? And then when we look at towards the high school auditorium, as a secondary question I have is, when are we gonna do that work? Is, you know, we just approved the extended school year, I know that you kinda use that area, summer camps, so when are we gonna do the work in the school, during the school day?
I'll start with the boiler. Things are already happening. We've already contacted our architect, the Museo Group, our school district, to come in, and they've already taken measurements. Because step number 1, they have to draw up schematics. That has to go to the State Department of Education for approval before we can put together specifications for a bid packet, and assuming and hoping that all of that does move along accordingly as quickly as possible, but the state can be a little slow doing their part. The next step would be to go out to bid for the boiler. Our hopes is to begin the work over the summer for the boiler, July and August. We have to start first with removal of the old boiler, and, you know, that's quite extensive in itself. That would have to be done. And then once the removal, assuming, you know, we awarded the bid, then the boiler now has to be manufactured, put together, brought in, and built in place. Our goal is to try to get all of that done by October 15th, which is your typical start of feeding system. That's our goal. Okay, that's the boiler, I answered that component. The auditorium project, that too has already started. We've done some cleaning up work. Our own maintenance staff has started doing some, you know, small items that need to be taken care of there. We've looked at getting prices through state contractors for auditorium seating. We've likewise looked at going through state contractors for flooring. We hope to get that started soon with the intention of removing the current seats over the summer. Then the next step would be to pull up the old floor, replace with the new flooring, and once that's finished, of course, then the seats come in. We're hoping, again, with construction, you can only say hope, that is all completed by September, or as close to September as humanly possible. Yes, it will affect possibly the summer camp play that normally would take place in the high school auditorium, but we already have a plan in place. I've spoken to Mr. Apillo, our summer camp director, my director of plan operations, and the tentative plan at the moment is to utilize the auditorium in Aldine School for the summer camp play. And, I
So
haven't answered all your questions,
No,
just please continue.
Yeah,
asking.
no, that's correct, that was great, and I appreciate your thorough answers. So will that be, so the auditorium renovation will, in totality, will be hopefully done by September, or are we staging it out?
We're hoping that it would all be done by
The school year.
September, with the exception if, pricing and funding allows, there may be some additional renovation to the current sound system and lighting system, which is in need of some repair and updating. That feasibly would
But that
happen
may-
more in the fall.
And then one other question that I had was, if you will, so the Friends of Roselle Park have done a fabulous job over the years of fundraising. And they're gonna bring dollars to the table as far as, so can you just help me understand, I guess we're gonna write the check for the seats or whatever, the sound system, floors, ceiling, we being the Board of Education. This gets deposited into our accounts. Where does it show up in our budget? Is it an extraordinary item that, is carried in the budget and transferred against overtures throughout the year? How does this work?
Since the seating and flooring will be purchased with the least purchase loan money, the actual check and dollars are sent by U.S. Bancorp, not by us. We do show in our expenditure side a purchase order for that amount, for that, except it shows up as a penny, so that it shows up, but the expense is not coming from our general fund budget.
Okay.
If that answers.
But where
that
does the dollars from the Friends of Roselle Park, where does that end up
Okay.
into the financials?
Most likely, and again, depending upon what the seating cost is and the flooring cost is, I am thinking at the moment that that money from the Friends of Roselle Park will be utilized towards the sound and the lighting component. I have big hopes, that we'll get some good prices, and therefore, be able to do the seating and flooring through the lease purchase and use that money to also renovate the sound system and the lighting system. So in the future, you will see in the budget a purchase order, hopefully, for the company that does the sound system, the company that does the lighting, and that particular check from the Friends of Roselle Park will be like a reimbursement to that line item.
Okay.
And you'll see it in that line item.
When that comes up, could you just, if we remember, just point that out to
Sure.
the
Not a problem. Yeah, if you-
Because they've done a
A full
fabulous job.
printout, you'll see that.
Yeah, they've done a fabulous job of fundraising, and it would be great to understand exactly what those dollars are showing up, fruits of their effort.
And again, that's my plan
Yeah,
at the moment,
that's
and
like-
until we get concrete dollars, you know, locked in, I can't say 100% that it'll play out that way. But that's my hope.
Thank you very much for the explanation.
Anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Those items are approved. And now I'm looking for someone to make a motion to approve agenda item 10, which is the adoption of the 2014-2015 school year budget and tax levy.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Dan, Mr. Harms, second. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing that there are none, roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Vice President Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Balaban?
Yes.
Mr. Bruckenstein? Mr. Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Gerton?
Yes.
Mr. Harms?
Yes?
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Vita?
Yes.
President Miller?
Yes.
On roll call, motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And now we're on to continuing business. Mr. Rito.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. As of today, there have been 6 students that have been found living out of Roselle Park, and therefore they have been transferred or removed from our roster. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garrido. Now on to new business. Is there any new business to report? Seeing that there is none, we're going to open up our second public participation portion of the meeting. If you'd like to speak on anything, please come forward, state your name, address, and what you'd like to speak on.
Hello, I'm Jody Foy, 429 Seton Avenue. I just wanted to thank Mr. Garrido and the administration and the board for listening to all the comments at our last meeting. It definitely feels good to know that our thoughts and our wishes for our schools and our children were heard, so I do thank you. And I'll be passing it on to the PTO members and all of our parents at Aldine. So that'll be good. My 3rd graders actually planned on having some lemonade sales to save the library. So I'll let them know that they can use their profits for something else. But thank you very much. And also just to remind everyone, it's Teacher Appreciation Week, and all the PTOs and PTAs have been just showing different acts of kindness and supporting their teachers, just so it's on record to everyone appreciate your teachers. Thank you.
Thank you.
So here's 150 Berlin Street. When will the vote for the school vendor, the lunch vendor, for the meal event be? It's usually in May, I just wanted to find out.
There was an ad in one of the major newspapers about 2 weeks ago for a request for a proposal. The deadline for that, I believe, is this Thursday at 11 a.m. So depending upon the response to that, they usually don't come in until the morning of. So we will look at those proposals and see, how many we get and the prices that they are going to give us. And after that, then a recommendation will be made to the board, and on a future agenda, which probably would then be the end of May, you will see something to that effect.
Thank you. Historically, how many bidders come in for that RFP?
Last time, we received only one. 5 years prior to that, I believe we received 2.
Okay. And what if parents express concern or recommendations or suggestions regarding meals or things for lunch? Is there really much leeway?
Probably not with awarding the contract, but certainly, that does not stop us from having meetings between the parents, staff, children, and the food service company, that we award the contract
If I
to
could-
get input and hopefully,
Well, I mean, to do that, to your question, so I would think that we'd have to do it kind of like last month or the month
Right.
before that well, I mean, how do you put out specs for a vendor to come in and say,
Change them.
yeah, I'm putting out peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and now you want steak? Wow, I
Okay.
can't do that.
Well, but they're gonna use will they not use the
It's
federal
federal
guidelines?
No,
Exactly.
I understand that, but
That's
I
what
think
it is.
Saul's question was, will there be anything, if the parents were
Yeah.
concerned about something, as we had one
Yeah.
student come and said,
Right.
question about the amount
Right.
that they get. At this point, I don't think we could.
It's a little
because
too late,
it's
so
out to-
in future, maybe
You might have to
March
figure
or
it out,
April,
sure.
it'd be a good thing
right,
to.
our hands are somewhat tied by the federal guidelines
You're allowed-
with
The amount of-
awarding the contract. But from there,
And
there
because
should
that-
be a dialogue between, the
And because
staff and the food service.
They took
company.
away food items simply because of the federal guidelines.
We can look into it a little bit
Right.
more, just to find out what we could do for next year.
And then maybe
To
right.
try to help it out a little bit.
Right,
Sure.
certainly, that's what I meant by
Yeah.
those meetings.
No, right, right.
With regard to the libraries, so it's gonna become a full media center where there's gonna be books and computers and technology.
Correct.
And then, I'm just asking, the staff, who will staff that? Was it you?
Well, don't forget, technology instruction will be held here, so
Correct.
for the majority of the day, it will be the technology teachers, the computer teachers. I know the principals are working on a plan whenever the library is not being used, either the teachers bring the students in, or paraprofessionals, we will, and hopefully our plan also is before, after school, maybe some parent volunteers that would manage the media centers as well.
Will that be publicized, like, other than here?
Do you want me to?
That would be good, I mean, that way we can put, as Mr. Harms knows,
Yes.
I'm all for getting the word out.
Yes, I will put something together, so then we'll put it out on the website.
And then with regard to those questions, although your statement basically covered a lot of them,
Most of the questions were answered.
there are still some that maybe concerns, suggestions. When will those be addressed, or how will those be addressed?
I do have those questions, most of them are logistic, and we're working on it. For example, I know you asked about the lunch,
Right.
how we're going to, so
Correct.
the principals are working on a schedule where they're either gonna add another lunch period. In Aldine, we can't do that because we use the gymnasium for the lunches, so we're just gonna expand the lunch space.
Are those other questions, will they be here, will they be on the website, will they be?
I know you're looking at, I'll put something together, I'll either put it out at the next meeting, or we'll put it on the website as a frequent questions and answers.
And Mr. Balaban, you weren't here last time, but I wanted to say again with you here, that I questioned the attendance policy. And since then, has there been any information that can be provided?
I've looked through the 9,000 series, and I did not see anything as far as the board is concerned. As far as attendance.
That's what she gets paid.
Mr. Miller is correct that there is no established board policy with respect to attendance. However, the statute that addresses it talks about, as we had mentioned, that if you fail to attend 3 consecutive meetings, then the Board of Education, the remaining sitting members, essentially have the discretion to determine if there is good cause for your removal. There is no legal definition as to what good cause is. It's to the discretion of the remaining board members. They essentially discuss it and determine if it's something that should be put to vote.
And again, my recommendation is, just so the public, and it's on the record, just to say, because after the meeting, President Miller stated, he wasn't even phone calls. So maybe to say, these members called in or are not available for, in other words, to notify that, they notified they couldn't make it. If there's anything to do for the students. If the students didn't show up for school and didn't call in, that'd be a problem.
We get a note of the next meeting.
You know, Scott hasn't been here.
Correct,
for-
and I
for a
totally
while
say-
because of his-
Absolutely.
There's an injury now.
He just,
But there are a lot of people who didn't know that,
No,
you
no.
know, and just
they might
so
want to
it's.
send him a sympathy card. I mean, you know,
Get
feel
well.
better.
Get well.
He's not- Well, sympathy
I'm sorry,
card,
yeah, I'm sorry that you couldn't make the shot, you couldn't the card. No, but just so everyone knows, and there's no, you know, whispers of gossip, just to say, hey, like, you said, Mr. Melvin did call you, and then it's on the record. Again, because if the students don't call in, they get an issue. And I guess my final question is regarding, oh, no, that was it, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, all.
Thanks for the letter.
Taking care of 6 Plum Street, in Roselle Park. We'll go back to Homeland Security. The system on voting was middle school and Aldine were included. And then making up the ballots went to the county, which saved money. Now, I don't recall if it was 13,000 that we saved. But were we still paying the security for a police officer at Robert Gordon and Aldine?
Middle school.
Middle school.
Middle school, my humble
Yes.
apologies.
It was only 1
Yes.
year.
Yeah.
It was last
It was 1 year we paid. Just last year we paid. That's the only time we ever paid for security.
That was, it was the
Last
first year.
was the first year, and that was the only year we ever paid.
Now, what was the cost last
$24 an hour times
I think it was
whatever.
like 700.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
6 hours.
I think we approved it like for around 700.
Something like that. Something like that. It was about $700.
That's memory.
But Jake,
Yeah.
to answer your original question about if we're looking into some type of grants, if that's something that we have discussed, the possibility of grants, not only for security, for instruction, so if it meets the criteria for a grant, we certainly will look into it. That's a security grant.
Mr. Garrido, if I didn't ask the question, I wouldn't know the
No, I
answer.
just wanted to let you know
Now I
that. we-
know a little bit more about it.
Yes.
You know, I'm not an educator. I'm not going to go for it.
But Jacob, I think it's important to note, there will be security,
So there'll be
regardless,
security.
regardless if it's grant or has to come out of the district's budget.
And also, Jake, don't forget that there's also some discussions about the possibility of moving the election. I know President Miller has written letters, and I know he's met with other, you know, which it's probably a slim chance of that happening, but we're trying to do that as well.
The board voted on the budget tonight.
Yes.
Yes, number 10.
Governor Christie said we're short about $800 million. Education is still on the table, and he may cut that.
We'll be in big trouble if he does.
What did he give us, $1 increase?
No.
That confirmed with Mrs. Gershio. She mentioned it at the last meeting, $1. That was more than what we had gotten the year before.
So the question, what will we do? Is that the question?
Is there a question?
If there is a cut, do you undo the budget, or how do you manage this? Do you raise taxes?
We will do what the law allows us to do.
And what does the law allow you to do in this particular case?
We don't
It
know at this
hasn't
point.
happened yet.
We don't know at this
And
point.
guidance will come from the state if that should happen. They will direct us what to do.
How much will the new furnace at Sherman Gateway School cost? The cost of the furnace and architect fees.
We have not gone out to bid yet for the boiler, so I cannot give you a dollar amount on that. I estimate the total project should cost about $300,000 between the architectural fees and all the engineering fees and the actual removal, and then the new boiler coming in and being manufactured and put in place. An estimate of $300,000.
And on a light note, as Mr. Kirsten had a question rightfully so, I'd like to make a comment on that. If a person is absent, or member is absent, cut his pay or her pay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
idea.
Seeing there's no one else, we're going to close the second public participation portion of the evening. And now we welcome back Mrs. Gwen Thornton from the New Jersey School Boards Association. She will be giving us we're going to go into a workshop and an open session, of course, to discuss the superintendent and the board self-evaluations training at this point. Mrs. Kenny, you're more than welcome to leave and enjoy your evening as is board as well. And but everyone's welcome to stay if you'd like. Thank you.
I'll switch. You can go home and put my kids to bed and I'll stay. I'll stay. Good night. Good night.
Good evening.
Hello, how are you?
Is this open?
Yes, it's open.
Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night.
Just informationally for all of the board, I know that we as an association are working with districts all across the state around concerns for security and the election. We're not the only county that's had difficulty in dealing with that. A lot of the districts tend to have schools where voting takes place during regular school hours, and maintaining school security while at the same time permitting voters access and egress without endangering or failing to comply with district regulations around signing in and providing ID is something that a lot of districts are struggling with. So I know that we're working with legislators on trying to find solutions to that, including obviously relocating to other facilities, perhaps municipal facilities, churches, or other kinds of facilities within communities, the actual polling places, that would then not pose a problem for school districts in terms of student security or cost you any additional funding for providing that security, which you have to do in order to keep the kids secure. So that's first and foremost. And also, we just got an update today on the state, and I think these numbers are just interesting. If the state did not make one additional payment to any state employee between now and the end of the fiscal year, they would not be able to close the gap that remains in the state budget. But if they made no additional state aid payments to education for the remainder of the year, they would be able to close the gap, which I thought was just an interesting piece of information. Because additionally, the last time that the state had a significant shortfall in the first year of the governor's term, they came in and they took your surplus, that those of you who've been on the board for a while may recall that, and then reduce state aid, but most districts have smaller surpluses as of now as a result of that particular circumstance. They got a little more aggressive in how they handled those issues, and so there's not sufficient surplus out there to really make a dent in the gap that remains in the budget for the fiscal year. So Commissioner Hespy, elect Secretary of Education, Commissioner-elect Hespy is interim, currently indicated at the latest press release that as of now he doesn't know what the governor's plans are, but that education, since 3 out of every $5 in the budget go toward education, is certainly an area that perhaps is of concern. So I think we're all going to be faced with that challenge in some way perhaps in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned. we'll see what happens. Yeah, I mean, we may need to mobilize in some way to let them know the kind of impact. And I don't know what will happen, and perhaps nothing will happen, but they're making noises like something will happen. So I just wanted to bring you all up to date. That's not good news. I don't ever enjoy bringing you that kind of news, but it's
But
not
I think,
good.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, I think one of the issues, by May 15, we have to notify staff of their renewals or not.
Yeah.
If it does cut, and it happens that we have to, is that something that's gonna change the law?
I
mean,
don't know what they will do.
Yeah.
I'm sure your counsel's advice and our
Right.
advice would be to move forward
Mhm.
as if everything is in place.
Right, yeah, right, exactly, that's what we're doing.
Because you have no choice, because we don't know. And so if they do make some kind of change, then I imagine that they will make some kind of allowance
Okay.
for those dates and hold harmless districts that carried on as if we knew
Mhm.
what was going to happen.
I see lawsuits and lawsuits, but that's, again, who knows?
Yeah, I know.
Well, he may withhold pension payments, he may borrow money, he may look at
There
it
are
very
whole
serious.
other kind, there are lots of,
I know.
there are lots of alternatives. I think I just get a little concerned when I know that the Commissioner of Education is talking about it.
Exactly.
It pretty much says
Yeah,
Something-
something is on the
something
horizon.
something is on the
Yeah.
horizon, there's
Right.
something in the wind, and so I just wanted to make you all aware of that because it may, sort of change the dynamics of the coming summer and school year moving forward. So I think it's interesting to think about. One of your most important responsibilities, which all of you know, I'm sure, is the annual evaluation of the superintendent. The superintendent is evaluated by the full Board of Education, absent any members of your board who are conflicted out of the process because they have a family member employed in the district on a full-time basis. So if you are a board member who has a family member employed full-time in the district, you would not be permitted by the SEC, the School Ethics Commission, to be able to participate in that process. We have an online process. In your packet on the left-hand side, you will see a copy of the directions for going online. The first step in the process is that Pedro will go on, enter his district goals, and then enter his assessment of those goals, because that's the first part of the statute says that the superintendent is annually evaluated on progress towards the achievement of district goals. Once Pedro has done that, hits complete and submit, you automatically will get an email to your email address that you use and that Sue has registered you with us for using. I brought with me your data sheet. I'm going to pass this around as I'm talking. If you're not sure what the email address we have on file for you is, please write down the email address that's next to your name, because when you go on to enter your evaluation, if you use another email address, it will say that the system doesn't recognize you, you're not a member of this board. Okay, so if you're not sure what your email address that we have registered for you is, just copy it down from here and use that email address as your full username to go on to our website. I'm sure most of you have been on. It's www.njsda.org. It's on that sheet of directions. If you don't have a password, or you're like me and can't remember what the password was because you haven't looked since last year when you did this process, you can click on the button that says Get Password. We will send you a link, allow you to set a new password, and then it will be yours to go on and you enter that. So that's how you get into the system. The system asks you to read what the superintendent's goals were, look at his assessment of those goals, and then enter your assessment. That is part one of the superintendent's evaluation. And actually, for those of you who have never seen the document, on the left-hand side of your packet in blue, there is a copy of the actual evaluation so that you can see what that looks like. You can see there are directions there, you can see the goals portion. If the superintendent has merit goals in addition to regular district goals, part 4 that you will fill in will be your merit goals and your assessment of progress toward completion of those to date, okay? The second portion of the evaluation that you're looking at are the leadership skills, the superintendent's overall responsibilities under the law in terms of his job description, including general responsibilities, personnel, instructional leadership. There are 4 different categories: commendable, meets expectation, needs improvement, unsatisfactory, and there is a fifth category, and that is not observed. So if you're a new board member and you've just been seated since January, for example, and you haven't seen the superintendent in a particular area, say negotiations, just because you may not be doing that right now, just check not observed. It is neither a positive nor a negative, it's a complete neutral. In fairness, this is designed to be an annual evaluation, a communications tool that helps the board and the superintendent stay on the same page. So if you haven't had an opportunity to observe a full year's worth of board work or in a particular area, my recommendation would simply be just check off not observed. Once you have all gone in and entered this, I track it online. All I can see is your last name and the date you completed. I can't see anything that you've written, nor do I want to, because we're not in the business of evaluating the superintendent. We're helping you facilitate that process. Once I see that you've all entered it, I hit a button, it automatically compiles the document verbatim. So if I say this really in jest, if you didn't use spell check when you entered and something's misspelled, it's not because I misspelled. It comes back absolutely verbatim. The way you enter it is the way it comes back. So everyone's comments are included. Exactly what you have said is included. I would strongly recommend that if you check in a particular category or a particular indicator that a skill or a set of knowledge is commendable, please take the time to say why. It is a communications tool. I know that those of you who are employed and are evaluated on a regular basis, I know that I appreciate hearing what I do well. And conversely, if there's an area that you believe is in need of improvement, please take the time to say why. Skills are transferable, so if someone's doing an exceedingly wonderful job in the area of educational leadership, but you have a concern in the area of policy, if you can say why the leadership and educational leadership was terrific, then perhaps that skill is transferable into another area, all right? And I always think that as human beings, if we say we're not, there's an area where we need to improve, that's all good and well, but I really need to know what it is I need to do to improve. So please take the time to do this very thoughtfully and carefully. I think you can say anything that you need to say, depending upon the words you choose and the tone that you take when you say it. Once this is compiled, I return it to the district, to Chris. I make 9 copies. Absent anyone being conflicted out of the process. The board is then allowed to meet. You must give your superintendent a rights notice. And then you may meet and discuss and develop a summary evaluation. That summary document needs to reflect the will of the majority of the board, as anything that the board does reflects the will of the majority. If you have a minority voice in a particular area, let's say you're still concerned about policy, about HIV, for example. The law requires that once that summary evaluation is written, that the full Board of Education sit down with the superintendent in closed session, unless Pedro wants it held in open, but it's personnel, so it's closed session. You can sit down and review that evaluation with Pedro. That's where your voice, a minority voice, meaning you may be the only board member who still has a concern, you have an opportunity to say, while my colleagues believe you did an outstanding job, I want to share with you that I still have this concern and here's why. Because really it is a tool. I have never met a superintendent who did not want to meet the needs of all of his or her board members. So it's your opportunity, if you have a minority voice, a position that the majority does not necessarily share, that you have that opportunity at that meeting with the superintendent to voice your concern or your ideas so that it can be heard by the superintendent and by the full board. Once that conference has been held, the superintendent signs and dates a copy of the evaluation. That is acknowledgement of receipt of the evaluation. It is neither agreement with or disagreement with the evaluation. It's the same process for all certified staff, teachers, supervisors, directors. That's all part of the process. The board president signs it, dates it. A copy is given to Pedro for his personnel file. One copy should be kept for the board. My recommendation is that you put it in an envelope, seal it, mark superintendent's evaluation, 2013-14, and it either be kept in the personnel office, but more preferably, I like to have board attorneys keep it. Sometimes when they come in to do a CUSAC, The state wants to make sure that you're fulfilling your responsibilities, not so much to read the eval as to see that the document exists. If the board attorney has it, it's a real easy fix for him or her to be able to say, here it is, and to provide that for CUSAC. Because failure to complete this in a time frame that's required by law, you will lose points under New Jersey Quality Single Accountability Continuum, the monitoring system. So you need to do this. The new deadline for completion of this is June 30th, meaning you must fill out the forms. I have to get them back to you. You have to write the summary evaluation. You have to sit down and share it with the superintendent and review it, and then it's signed. When it is signed, that process is completed. Chris?
Pardon me, Gwen, but, so once you send me the documents,
I will hand deliver them to you because once compiled, we consider it a personnel record, and I will not email a personnel record to you.
Okay, fine, and then we meet with, we rice Mr. Garrido
Yes, you may all meet
without
Without
Mr.
for the
Garrido.
purposes of writing that
And
summary
developing
eval.
a summary. Okay.
Sometimes the board president and vice president will get together ahead of time and write up that summary and bring that to the board along with the compilation, because sometimes 9 different people trying to sit and write a report, you could be here until the Red Sea parts, just as a suggestion, or sometimes it's a committee of 3 board members that will do it, and then the board can change it and make suggestions, but trying to write it from scratch with all 9 of you, not just here, but any board, can become quite challenging. So my recommendation is that you find a way to put that together ahead of time. Once the board has seen that final report, is comfortable with it, my recommendation is before you meet with Pedro, that you give it to him a couple of days ahead of time, so that he has an opportunity to read it and review it, so that you can have a productive conversation. I would not want to get my evaluation and then sit down and be expected to have an intelligent conversation about what it contains, what it says, how do I respond, So if, as a courtesy, there's no requirement to do that, but as a courtesy, as professionals, I think it behooves you to give it to the superintendent, a couple days ahead, so they have time to review it and reflect on it. So as you sit and meet, then you can talk about, here's what went really well, here's where we are, here's what we need to be thinking about moving forward. And then, of course, the next step is the process begins again. You collaboratively set new district goals. Pedro works on those as you move forward through the summer, writing action plans to make those new goals happen. And those are the goals against which then you will evaluate him in 2014-15. So it's sort of an ongoing process that never really ends. Once you complete the eval, then you begin the next step in the process, which is to set new goals for the 2014-15 school year. So it's sort of an ongoing process.
And that could be addressed at the retreat as well.
Well, yeah, I'm not suggesting you have to set them at the evaluation
Right.
meeting. I'm just saying, once you complete the evaluation, then the next step to the process for the following year is the setting of district goals for the 14-15 school year. Okay? The board's self-evaluation was very briefly included in the DPR for governance. The state took them out. We recommend that once you have completed the superintendent's evaluation, you work on the board self-evaluation. You hold your superintendent accountable for his or her performance, and then you look at your own performance. On the left-hand side of the packet, and I believe that it is in
Green.
Thank you, you're even faster than I am, because we kill trees in color in my office. And here's a sample of it. It asks you to look at the board's performance as a board in the areas of your responsibility, and then it asks you to look at your individual performance in terms of those same areas: policy, finance, community relations, board staff relations, board superintendent's relations. And typically what happens is I compile this document, we'll bring it back in. When you need to begin doing your goal setting, typically the board looks at the outcomes from the self-evaluation in thinking about how it wants to move forward for the following year. So you hold your SIP accountable, and then you hold yourselves accountable. And it's a way of developing, perhaps for the board, if they so choose, a board goal for the following year, and perhaps professional development that you might identify that you want to do as a board or individually. So that is the purpose of the self-evaluation. I've given you also a sample evaluation calendar. where you can fill in your specific dates. It's in a salmon color. Again, this reflects the new timeline. Instead of being completed by April the 30th, we now have June the 30th, so we created a new calendar for you, just to give you some ideas of the timelines around this. The evaluation is up online. It's available now, so as soon as Pedro will go in and put in the goals and hit complete and submit, you will get an email from me that says it's ready for you to go on. You can pretty much go on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Occasionally, I have to be honest with you, they take down our servers for some reason. If you go on and have that problem, just email me and I can tell you when they'll be back up, but it doesn't happen very often. But invariably, it happens when some board member goes in and tries to do it.
So what's the date that has to be completed by?
June 30th. So all steps have to be completed by June.
No, I mean, my section, it doesn't.
It doesn't matter.
Mid-May.
11 a.m. tomorrow.
As soon,
Listen,
and so that the board has time to
So,
enter their assessment.
mid-May, it's, I mean, by May 15th, you
I
say
would
it's,
think that that would be great.
that would
If
be
you can
great.
get it done by May 15th. And then, Chris, I recommend you give the board a week or two, but not too long,
Right.
because here's what's gonna happen. Well, it seems like you have a lot of time between now and June 30th. You really don't. And the end of the school year, you have the retirement dinners and the school kids
No, June, June.
celebrations and, you know, all the hoopla that goes with the fun stuff that goes with the end of the year that you all enjoy. And you don't want this hanging over your head, you know, so my recommendation is to do it in a timely way so that it's completed and it gets done.
And you're saying do the board after the
Yes, do your
superintendent?
superintendent first, and the reason for that is there's a statutory deadline. The board self-eval does not have in law a deadline. You can do that at any time. So I always tell my boards, do what's legally required first,
Yeah.
and then do the self-eval. I also would tell you that when you go on to do the superintendent evaluation, if you sign in and you begin to do it, and then you run out, and, you know, because you're just gonna pick up your son or daughter from soccer practice, but then you decide that you need to go get something to eat, you don't come back till 2 hours later, because it's a secure website, just like banking websites, they will time you out. So you can hit, you know, continue and go back in at another time, just don't hit either submit, because then you won't be able to get back in. I'll have to reset it, which I can do, but it'll wipe out everything you've already entered. Some board members will write it out on our front page when you go in. It's on the right-hand side under popular resources, which it says here. There's also this superintendent eval is a Word document, so if you want to download it and cut and paste and type it in or write it up first before you type it in, if that's something you want to do, you can do it that way as well. If that's easier for you to do it, download it, then fill it all out, and then cut and paste it into the form online so that you don't get timed out. That's something you can do as well. You may not find that necessary, it's whatever you want, but we have it up there as a resource document for you to make your lives quicker and easier, because we know you're busy. But it is a very important piece that you are doing. A lot of the information around completion of the merit goals may not yet be available, because a lot of that, I'm sure, they're quantitative, and they're tied directly to either ask scores or other kinds of student assessments that may have not, as of yet, been completed. So you can either fill out progress to date and do it that way, or you can hold off. I mean, it's entirely up to you and up to the board how you want to handle that. We can't, you know, the state has set up these deadlines with doing these things that don't necessarily match up currently.
So how do we go back and modify a merit goal after the
You
fact?
can't, so if you don't.
So, because his evaluation's
if
kind
he
of
doesn't-
final, right?
Well, that evaluation is final, but the merit goals are separate in a very real way. We added them on because NJASA asked us to put it in the document, the Superintendent's Association, because we weren't going to do it, because it's almost impossible to measure those, because there are at least three. You can have 3 quantitative and 2 qualitative. You might be able to measure the qualitative. The 3 quantitative are generally tied to all kinds of data that just come in. That data may not be available until September or October. So you're gonna have to make a decision, so our recommendation is, if the board's comfortable, make a decision based on progress to date, because you're not going to have that until perhaps September or October, perhaps with the move to park next year. We will have assessments dated back in a more timely way so that you could make those better decisions. But it's the same thing with the May 15th.
Right.
You know, teachers' final evaluations aren't done, but you have to make decisions around renewals and non-renewals, and those final teacher evaluations aren't available either. So you're making judgments with the most information that you can have at a given point in time. Additionally, you have to submit those goals again to the ECS, the Executive County Superintendent, for their review before you can write a check. So so the board can weigh in, and then it has to all go then, your conclusion that these goals have been met or satisfactory progress has been made, it goes to the ECS, and only after the ECS reviews it and says, fine, can you cut a check anyway? So it is not as though the board is making that decision alone, if that's any help. We know that it's challenging because of the way the system is set up, and the deadlines and the dates don't match up with the accountability system that's currently in place to measure student achievement and growth. And teachers don't have completed SGOs or SGPs, but you have to make those recommendations by May 15th because that's what's in statute. It's really no different. It doesn't make it better, I get that, but it doesn't. It is sometimes what the state does. So that's really a really brief overview. I know that you've been here since 6, and I don't want to keep you. Questions that I can answer for you on this process?
Did we have last year's board evaluation summary?
Did you do it?
We did.
We didn't do it because Pat was.
No, board.
Board.
Board one.
Because we definitely, we filled it out.
We filled it out.
I believe that it is sitting on my desk in Trenton in a folder, so I can bring you last year's and I can bring you this year's if you would like. And it's done, because I remember running it, and then we didn't meet, so I do have it completed, and we keep those. We do not keep superintendent evaluations. Once I run that compilation, that document, and bring it to you, it is purged from our system. You know, I occasionally have had a VA call me when PSAC comes in and says, please tell me you have a copy of the superintendent's eval, and I say, we don't, because we don't keep them. They're not it's not our document, it belongs to the board, and we eliminate it from the system because we're not in the business of evaluating superintendents. The self-evals, on the other hand, we do keep because they're the board, and they're different, so we hang on to those because we work with board. So I do have prior year evaluation that the board may have done for itself, but not for the superintendent.
And last year's disclosure on Mr. Spangletti's tenure.
No, I
Yeah, but you're
remember the
talking about the board, yeah.
I remember.
Right.
Actually, I have a question for Mr. Garcia. Do we, in our employee files, the evaluation, the superintendent?
Sure.
That's one of the things that goes in the file.
Could we have the board or the superintendent evaluation at our attorney's and at the board office?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
You could, you just want to make sure that it's accessible. You know, for a while, there were instances where board presidents kept them. First of all, it's confidential personnel record, and so that's a little iffy. Just from the perspective of most board presidents don't want to have that in their home.
Right.
Sure.
Okay? And then board presidents, you know, I had this actually happen to me personally. I left the board, I moved to a different part of the state, I got a call from my VA in my district who said, please tell me you have a copy of this, because the state was in looking for it. The good news was that I had it, but bad news was I was living in a different, but I got it to them.
Sure.
So after that, we pretty much said, you know what, it makes better sense to have the attorney. Their access is much easier than, board presidents leave, they don't run for re-election, they move out of town. So it's just, you always want to make sure that you have that accessibility, that access.
So while we're waiting for Mr. Garrido to enter in the goals and his evaluation, progress towards them, we could, we could actually start our own board self-evaluation.
No,
Absolutely.
but that's what, Gwen had said, no, we should do the
Well,
superintendent.
if
But
you're
just start
waiting,
opening it up, like working on maybe a section here, a section
yeah,
there.
if you're waiting for Pedro to complete his section, you can't do his eval.
Oh, that was what I was asking before.
You can't do his.
Right, so we have to, but we can use, we can go in and do ours.
Oh, yeah, you
Yes.
can do it anytime, but my point was, once he does his, focus on getting that
Because
finished.
there's a
because
deadline,
Because of the legal
statutory
deadline.
deadline.
There's a deadline, but yes, you can go in at any time
Okay.
and work on your self-evaluation. I didn't mean to say, don't do it. I was just saying, please focus on his first, because his is the one that's required by law.
So maybe if we set a date of May 25th, that's I believe that's a Sunday.
Bad weekend.
Well, I'm not saying I do it on that weekend, but.
Well, that's one.
That's right.
Now, there's an honest response.
Yeah.
If you say the 25th, I'll be working on it on the 25th.
Right. Wow.
So, but just let me know, and what I do is, on an almost daily basis, now that it's evaluation season, I go in and I look.
Yeah.
And as boards get closer, I will email the board president and say, I'm still missing 3,
Sure.
so that you know who need to remind
Right.
to complete it. So I will do that on a regular, you'll get an email from me that says, I have 6, you need to just make sure that Troy and Lauren cannot, no, I'm just teasing you. I'm teasing you.
I don't mean all the time, that's insulting coming into my house and insulting me.
No, Lauren, I wasn't, it's because you said you'd be doing it on the 25th.
Oh.
No, I said I wasn't gonna be doing that on the 25th.
Whatever the deadline
Be
is,
in
I'll be
nature.
doing it the night before.
So, I will let you know, so that
Okay.
you can just remind the board members to do it.
Sure.
Okay? All right. Any other questions? All right, my pleasure.
Thank you very much.
If you think of anything, you can email me. Did everyone look to see what their email was?
Yes.
You got it? Okay.
Hey Gwen, one quick question about the voting. From your experience with other districts, have any districts like I mean, like I've heard from like Linden, like they combined wards and like I was talking to Mr. DeSimone, who's in the board of elections here in Union County, and like that was like a big no-no, or that's tough to do with there's so many like legalities.
There are.
But have you heard of it?
And
Has
some are
anyone?
more flexible about how they
Depends on where you're at.
respond. Yeah, then
Yeah.
others, and it's a very local issue. Do you know what I'm saying? Some don't want to move from their long-established voting location.
They have some standard about maximum number of voters or
750.
capacity in the building. And I think that's what's stymieing us,
Right.
because we're a small town, and that's the whole problem.
But it's, I mean, aside from like presidential elections, I mean, how many do we draw for
Right,
voting?
but the
Yeah.
but the point is, you have to
They look
figure
at
out
the
what they're
total
figuring out,
voters
worst case
per
scenario, actually use
district.
the term worst case, best case scenario, that all, I don't know, 10,000 people turn out to vote in a
Yeah.
given year, or however, whatever your population looks like, so they
That's
have.
why Lauren's running.
Isn't there some kind of proposed legislation on this though?
Yeah, they are, because there are a lot of people that are very concerned. I mean, there have been too many incidences in schools, and schools have put into place as many, safety precautions as they possibly can to make them as safe as they possibly can. And this abrogates all of those procedures and practices, but at the same time, voters have certain rights that you can't abridge. Easy access, easy egress, you don't have to identify who you are, all those kinds of things. It would be violative of the voters' rights
Right.
if they didn't.
Right, but the
have
school board doesn't have to accommodate that. The election,
Wait.
so,
I'm not arguing with you.
no, what I'm just saying is that, so what would be the consequences if the Board of Education in any community said no, because of the security issues that we feel that our students shouldn't have to go through, or close school for that particular day, we're not gonna allow you to use our buildings.
You could try, but they would, I'm sure, insist that they would provide the security, and you'd pay for it.
Well,
They can't guarantee it.
And alternately, what they would suggest is that you take the day off and close the school
Right,
so that they
right,
could use the facility. And typically, in national election years where we're electing a president, many districts will close on election day because the turnout will be, greater and so forth. So
So to them, it's more important to have people come out in this one particular location to vote than it is to protect our students.
Right.
That's typical of them, I understand that. It's typical.
One on another note, does
We're working on, I mean, we're trying to help because we recognize.
It's
that
just close, I'm just saying that they
It's a problem.
override
It's a big
everything
problem.
you do, but they, you know.
Does the School Boards Association offer grant writing as a service?
Actually, we have just developed a collaborative partnership with an organization, and it should be announced shortly, that will be able to assist you with grant writing, because we recognize a lot of smaller districts. The cost is prohibitive, and so in order to assist them in generating alternate additional sources of revenue, that's something that we are currently have in place and should be announced shortly,
Okay.
that will provide someone who will be able to do grant writing and or do professional development for staff members who may want to be able to do it as well, not board members necessarily, but to staff members who may be interested in grant writing.
If you wouldn't mind putting Roselle Park and Mr. Garrido and Mrs. Gershio at the top of your list,
I'd be happy to.
because it's something we're actively pursuing, and trying to find grant writers, and it is, just to procure them is expensive.
Exactly.
So certainly, anything that the School Board Association through our membership or add-on, bolt-on services,
Yeah.
if you could put them to at the top of your list, that would be.
I will be
Thank you.
happy to.
But when you say shortly before the end of the school year, June, do you
By
think?
midnight.
I'm not sure. 9 o'clock, no, I will ask
Okay.
and get back to you. I know that's in the works, exactly when the kickoff date of that is, I'm uncertain. I
Because
have
we're
to be
looking
honest.
at two different companies right now. Actually, they're gonna present at the next board meeting.
Okay,
But if you have any information that will help us.
yes, I'd be
That would
happy
be
to,
great.
I'd be happy
Please
to
let me
get
know.
that to you.
Thank you.
It's a cost, and in most
Yes.
districts, what they end up doing is grant writers take a percentage
That's right.
of the grant
Mhm.
in an effort to cover the costs.
And
Yeah,
some of them have upfront,
Well, and,
costs too.
and,
Yeah.
You know,
you
that
know,
they-
Glenn, that's actually what I've experienced throughout my career is it's a percentage off the top, which isn't so bad, but I guess maybe because of the size of the district or whatever the case may be, we're experiencing just the opposite
They
where
want it up front.
they want it up front, and, I'm not willing right off the bat to give that money without something to
Without
show
very-
for it,
right.
yeah.
That's a real problem.
That
I
is
mean,
problem.
I'm not sure I would be willing to do that either, because there's no assurance
Mhm.
that you're going to generate any revenue from their efforts, in that, which case there would be money that would be lost.
That's right.
And certainly, there's no excess to spare.
No.
Yeah.
And maybe 800,000, or 800 million less.
Yeah, very shortly, yes.
So thank you very much.
I know for that. it's
Next
like-
couple of weeks should be very interesting with the
It
state.
will be, and I think at a minimum, your last state aid payment's gonna get pushed, I think that's.
Even more than it already
Hmm?
is? Even more than it already is?
Yeah, I think maybe, they may take the 18th, not the 19th, or the 20th, and move them forward into the next fiscal year, and then just give you authorization to borrow.
Well, I guess Lakewood is gonna be completely closed down because they already are,
Well,
asking to borrow.
They put a fiscal monitor in.
Yeah, I know.
So we'll see what
We'll
happens.
see what happens.
We'll see what happens. That's busing is what's
Yes,
going late.
that's right.
Yeah, courtesy bus.
That's right, of course.
Well, and they're doing double runs
Mhm.
because of the issues around mixing genders, and it's just really,
They don't have sidewalks.
it's awful.
Well, we-
20,000 kids died in school.
Mr. Thurman, we thank you.
You're welcome.
Just one quick question about, with the, I don't know if you know the answer to it or not yet, but as far as the board accreditation for us, do you know where we stand as far as?
I
Can you get back?
have to look.
Great.
I have
We
to
know
look.
what this is.
Okay. Thank you.
But it continues to accrue, and you have up to 3 years to become accredited. So while this May you won't be accredited, it is likely that by next May you would receive accreditation as a board.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, we do get a pay.
You get a pay increase. You know what? I'll triple your pay.
Thank
I won't even double it. I will triple it.
Thank you.
Okay, I need to be glad.
And a lot of states board members are.
No.
And a
Yeah,
lot of
but
states
there are-
board
there are-
members
Motion
are.
to adjourn.
Adjourn, yeah.
Good, yes. Mr. Gurdon makes a motion to adjourn. Mr. Harms, second. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. We are closed and we'll see see you at our next board meeting, May 20th, at the Robert Gordon School Gymnasium at 7 o'clock. Thank you.